If it don't fit, don't force it. This phrase, uttered in frustration by a favorite coworker at my last restaurant job, was a plea to the dishwasher who repeatedly stacked hotel pans in a way that made them hard to pull apart in the heat of prep and service. I doubt that my morning shift companion had any idea that over the next several years, this phrase would become my favorite metaphor for relationships. We as a species thrive with a sense of purpose. We have an inherent need for connection. Research shows that a lack of human connection can be harmful to our health. Psychologists say that without purpose in our lives, we're more prone to boredom, anxiety, and depression. The pandemic has shown how vital our human connections are through the small germ circles we initially chose and through the use of technology we quickly learned. Without places to be and people to see, some struggle to get up in the morning or know what to do with themselves. It's been stressful, anxiety-inducing, and depressing at times. As a result, many of us have gained a greater sense of appreciation for our connections and recognized our purpose in the last year. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, describes his experiences in concentration camps during World War II. He observed that the inmates most likely to survive were those who felt they had a goal or purpose. This innate desire to find meaning in life makes us humans unique, and it can also cause us to suffer. Today, I'll explore what I've learned about the purpose of relationships and non-attachment, not forcing connections that don't fit. My considerations are focused through the lens of my 4 decades of life. I lived through a childhood move out of state, endured life on the fringe in high school and college within certain shadows of my siblings. I chose a return to my home state post-graduation and have had more long-distance relationships than local ones. I've experienced the death of close family members and dear friends. I've lived alone and as a full-time parent. I've tried marriage and survived divorce. I'm grateful for the bounty of purposeful human connections I've found. My parents and co-parent, family and childhood friends, neighbors and coworkers, teammates and roommates, and my barber and therapist, which are sometimes one and the same. I find meaning in the village I've created through my extracurriculars with dance, martial arts, acro yoga, and drumming. But the purpose of these relationships has been much different than what I initially perceived it would be. Perhaps you can reflect on a connection in your own life that began, developed, or ended unexpectedly. As Nick described in his worship associate story, even though he may not have lived up to Papu's expectations to be Christian or all things Greek, as he detached from the story laid out for him, he was able to see that his grandfather's purpose was, among other things, to show him adventure, the importance of family, and dedication to one's culture. The challenge is to keep our minds open to the possibilities of human relationships, to know that evolution is possible, if not inevitable, in our connections. I invite you to examine the significant relationships in your life. Observe how they've ebbed and flowed. Notice if your most trying connections might be rooted in attachment, and find the courage to question the purpose of these bonds and if they're destined for a different course. The rainbow of connections I've had in my life, no matter how tumultuous at times, have brought me right here to this beautiful place in my body, mind, and spirit where I find peace. I've consistently felt a sense of purpose in these relationships, though not without the heartache and heartbreak that attachment can bring. In hindsight, I see that the most challenging relationships existed upon expectations, past stories, or perfect images. They were based in attachment. Buddha says, attachment is the root of all suffering. Our daily experiences can create a lot of suffering for ourselves and others if we're attached to them. I invite you to recall the last time you struggled in a relationship, be it a friendship, romantic partnership, or parental role, and then consider a few reflective questions. Was the struggle because you or someone else had their heart set on a certain outcome or felt compelled to serve a specific purpose? Was it necessary for someone to detach from that outcome in order to reach resolution or move forward? The Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Real love begins when nothing is expected in return." How realistic is this, and how do we cultivate this kind of non-attachment? Non-attachment develops as we stay present versus clinging tightly to situations being better or worse than they are at this moment. When we let our purpose unfold, we can release this grip. What would it look like if we assumed the purpose of relationships wasn't to reach a certain destination, achieve a goal, fit an image, or last forever? What if we could connect without attachment and not force what doesn't fit? What would those connections mean? What would be their actual purpose? Brené Brown, best-selling author and research professor at the University of Houston, who has spent the past 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy, believes that one pillar of a meaningful life is a sense of belonging. In her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, she says, "Belonging is the innate human desire to be part of something larger than us. Because this yearning is so primal, we often try to acquire it by fitting in and by seeking approval, which are not only hollow substitutes for belonging, but often barriers to it. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world, our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance." End quote. Brown teaches us that there are different ways to find belonging. I've known this firsthand, embracing opportunities to bloom where I was planted. I confidently existed close to the margins throughout high school, finding friends across various cliques, dressing uniquely, taking classes that interested me even if my friends weren't there, and choosing extracurriculars that were weird or novel. It was terrifying at times to show up in a way that might be perceived as outrageous in my small hometown of Paris, Illinois. I did it anyway. Perhaps I felt protected by my 2 older siblings and teacher mother at my school, so I could take risks without being teased as harshly as someone without this privilege. I felt perfectly content being labeled as a nonconformist. I also have distinct memories of not feeling included, times when I had a deep desire to fit in, find purpose, and belong, through which my efforts were not well received or successful. Gratefully, these experiences are just a blink in my existence, but at the time, they brought me plenty of suffering. I had my years of trying to dress with the trends or wear my hair like everyone else. I joined a sorority in college because my sister convinced me I'd be accepted by a bunch of cool girls. I tried to take up space at the right hangouts and keep up with my coworkers' party mode in my early 20s. I also felt a shallow urge to gain invites from the most lively moms at my daughter's public school. Looking back, all of those bids felt forced. I didn't fit. If these were attempts to reinvent myself in a place where I knew few people and I was testing the waters, I eventually learned that I always came back to my core. It was simpler to just be me and not put on a daily act, potentially slipping up and showing my true colors, which wouldn't be acceptable in the circles in which I desired to run. I ditched the idea that I'd feel better if I was like everyone else. Every time I found courage to detach from those expectations, I found freedom in being. I found deeper connections. I found a sense of purpose. That's when my energy has thrived, when I've been able to draw positive people into my life, and when I felt most open to growth. The main purposes of my life relationships are fourfold. The metaphors I use to name them are a vault, a bridge, a mirror, a support. The vault is relationships that hold things. My mental pictures, juiciest stories, deepest secrets, and most ridiculous adventures. Childhood pals, siblings, and other dear friends hold these in their vaults. The relationships that are bridges help me over sometimes troubled water. Other friends and romantic partners have catalyzed my growth over rushing rapids or through the muddy muck onto solid ground. The relationships with my partner, best friends, and family show me who I am. They hold up a mirror so I can see where I stand to grow, and that sometimes I'm basically fighting against myself. And the relationships that offer support, like the spotter in acro yoga, include the people who stay close, offering a place to lean or to catch me when I jump or fall, but are not meant to hold me up indefinitely. My barber, former roommates, friends, partner, parents, and therapist have all spent many hours listening and encouraging me on my journey without acting as a crutch. Collectively, these humans have given me a sense of purpose in this lifetime. My purpose is to open up to others and grow into agape love. Agape is defined in Christianity as a universal, unconditional love that transcends and persists regardless of circumstance. It goes beyond just emotions to seeking the best for others. It extends to the love of one's fellow human beings, whether we know those people or not. Since I began building my village in the Midwest, my life feels more rich. My vibrations feel exponentially higher. I've noticed that the expansive feeling of agape moves me to more freely connect with people, strangers, or loved ones. Dr. John Gottman, American psychological researcher and clinician known for his extensive research on relationships and marriage, uses the phrase micro-connections to describe the connections we create moving through our daily lives, whether it's at the coffee shop, supermarket, work, or in yoga class. We can feel a sense of belonging no matter how small the interactions, if they're based on mutual care. When a person feels valued by another, when they're treated like they matter, they begin to believe it and can develop a sense of purpose. If someone followed me around with a camera, they'd learn that these micro-connections totally light me up. The pandemic has enhanced this experience as I've learned to relish even the briefest encounters. For months, we had so few opportunities. I also sense how valuable a gentle touch on the arm, a hug, a smile, and basic courtesy are to people. We have an opportunity to tell our fellow humans, I see you, I care about you. In a world where many people communicate and connect in ways that are painful, stressful, hateful, depressing, and resentful, we have an opportunity to foster positive culture with simple words of gratitude, telling people what they mean to us. This is a primary purpose in relationship, I find, through teaching, parenting, and partnership, in addition to those micro-connections with strangers. If we embrace our current purpose, detaching from expectations of ourselves and others becomes more possible. Then we're more likely to affect those around us. So how do we as humans who have a strong desire to belong and feel loved, especially in a knowingly fragile pandemic-affected world, do so in a way that doesn't rely on clinging so tightly? This non-attachment is at the core of Buddhist philosophy. It's what happens when we release the need to be in control of what's occurring and reduce our demands on the present moment to be in any particular way. It has less to do with what we have or hold on to and more to do with how those materials, people, or ideas hold on to us or keep us fixed in a plan or belief. A Zen master put it simply when he said, "Everything breaks. Attachment is our unwillingness to face that reality." Chicago area counselors Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkodian of Couples Synergy have taught me every relationship or marriage ends. We just don't know how or when. The goal isn't forever. The goal or purpose is to learn from these people as long as we're with them and grow as much as we can. They ask, what can we teach, offer, or learn from each other, then detach? My partner and I are exploring the phrase, when it no longer serves us. It's a saying I gathered from my yoga practice and am mindfully turning it around to see its meaning in our relationship. Knowing when you've reached peak growth in a relationship, be it a friendship or romantic partnership, is an idea that many people don't want to consider. But if one's focus is on growth, then it's important to know when we've outgrown relationships. It can sound selfish, assuming that it's about what's serving me versus us or the greater good. But if we consider what's next in terms of renegotiation and not termination, then we might continue to grow. Regarding marriage, I became fascinated with the idea of varying purposes of a legal commitment after my therapist shared Margaret Mead's take on this institution. Mead was a cultural anthropologist, scientist, nonconformist, and crusader for world peace. In her book Blackberry Winter, she comments on marriage. She thought women should marry 3 times in their lives, as Mead herself did. First, for the innocence and passion of young love. Second, for a home and stable family life. And last, for having the right person to grow old with. Even if one chooses more traditional relationship values, we could think about marrying 3 times with the same person, renegotiating the purpose of this bond and not attaching to our initial intent. I'm certainly not against commitment or marriage. In fact, I'm excited to celebrate my parents' 50th wedding anniversary later this month. While I don't desire to replicate every aspect of the relationship, I do see this longevity as a tremendous accomplishment. They've survived many seasons of their union. They've weathered every storm and renegotiated informally, no doubt hundreds of times. I detach from the expectation that this longevity or level of commitment is a must for me, and I congratulate them on their continued bond. In my current partnership, I observe how our connection evolves at a varied pace. We agree that our purpose is multifaceted. Primarily, it's a safe, mature, and supportive space to explore the depths of human connection. It's a companionship. It's a spiritual connection, and it's an opportunity for reflection and retrospection to heal from past relationships. It provides therapy for unhealthy patterns and tendencies. It's an opportunity to promote both personal and collective growth. We know we can each be quite content alone, growing individually, but we also know that we can thrive as a pair. Good alone, better together, we say, focusing on our purpose at present, detaching from what the future holds. This partnership has been Sant's relationship escalator from day one. According to the Urban Dictionary, the relationship escalator is a social expectation that a relationship should follow a set of steps and lead to, traditionally, marriage, parenthood, and homeownership. It's a social script for how people are supposed to behave and how we should think or feel in certain contexts or situations. This custom has benefited many people, but might not be for everyone. My partner and I have decided not to ask, is this relationship going anywhere? We have little interest in following the progressive steps towards a goal, and instead choose to support each other as each day, experience, and visit unfolds. This hasn't been easy, as we're both still very ingrained with tradition. But no matter how few items we check off our list, each visit feels complete. Everything that's supposed to happen happens. Would it feel this way if we were living together? I don't know. A few months after being together, I gave my partner a box in which to keep the notes and trinkets I'd gifted him. On the outside, I wrote my name and the year, followed by a dash, recognizing that relationship is impermanent. Perhaps one day he'll box up our connection and all its material remnants and put them on a shelf. Or perhaps we'll find ourselves together for a long time, and I'll actually be the one to whom he bequeaths this box after he dies. As Jack Kornfield said, everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well. On the flip side of non-attachment is the question of when detachment is more like giving up or not trying hard enough. I had to defend this when suggesting that a friend release someone from their life who was bringing them grief. If anybody believes in holding on to friendships, it's me, the person who's been the people connector, the family historian, the all-star pen pal for 20 years. I'm definitely not trying to dodge every negative association that arises. But in the seasons of our relationship, sometimes it's not until we release each other that we can become the next best versions of ourselves and better serve our purpose. It's challenging to consider the idea that relationships are impermanent. I've experienced this in friendships as dear ones passed away or seemingly fell off the face of the earth, in romantic relationships as healthy bonds abruptly snapped, and in my function as a parent when my heart sometimes aches with anxiety, sadness, or fear, imagining whether my daughter will be safe and loved as she goes out into the world seeking the adventure I model for her. I've realized that all of these people, even my kid, aren't mine to keep. I can offer companionship, support, and guidance, but they must find their own paths. I'll share the story of a relationship that offered me a great lesson in attachment. I have a friend I've known for 95% of my life. She lived across the backyard from my grandparents in Racine, went to the Catholic school where I attended for a few years, kept in touch when I moved, shared summer visits, was my bridge back into Wisconsin. She was my shoulder to cry on through heartbreaks. She was a maid of honor in my wedding. Our lives diverged once we got married and started families. We couldn't make the same time for each other as we once had. She's only 45 minutes away, but it seemed like hours. I hung on to our friendship and all the memories. Swimming naked in our kiddie pool in my backyard at age 2, racing to the corner when I visited my grandparents, savoring that first reunion. I gripped tightly to those summer visits, cruising around Raytown, hanging with friends near North Beach, then partying around Milwaukee's Upper East Side during college visits and summers, dipping a toe before I committed to Milwaukee permanently. But this friendship became painful to maintain because we were so out of touch with each other's lives. When we did get together, there was a lack of full attention as phone screens were more pervasive. Judgment grew as all we had to go by was experiences elsewhere in our lives, causing us to project onto each other what we knew from friends and family. I had to really reckon with myself about what I was gripping. The fact that she holds so many of my memories made me think I had to maintain this contact more closely than I was able. I expected that if I backed up from this bond, that I'd lose the key to the vault. I was attached to my past and not honoring what she and I both needed at present. It was a heart-wrenching decision to let that relationship go, but after I did, I felt enormous relief. I realized just how much I was forcing it when it no longer fit for either of us. Our friendship was past its time. Neither of us was willing to renegotiate the terms, so we let it go. While we did share an apology, the connection dissolved more organically, and I exhaled. Maybe she did too. We no longer have an active friendship, though we still reach out to each other occasionally and are connected on social media. We now show up without resentment. Our roles have changed. Our purposes are different. We've found peace. We've released from suffering. How do we know when our relationships with partners, old friends, or even, sadly, with difficult parents or children no longer serve us or them? How do we know when we've moved to the next season of a relationship? Can we look at our intention? Have we lost the balance or the desire for balance of giving and receiving? Has it become a constant struggle? Where's the breaking point? Once we know, what do? Renegotiate or let it go? We can choose to let go and perhaps they'll return to us. We can choose to let go knowing they helped us grow for as long as they could and we them. We could cling tightly and fight upstream for a connection that's no longer meant to be. Or we could set it down gently like the monk at the river releases the raft. In a committed primary relationship, I hope to receive 3 things: acceptance for who I am and where I come from, support for where I am now, and encouragement for where I may feel called to go in the future. I hope to also give acceptance, support, and encouragement in a loving, mindful, conscious way, with the purpose of giving and receiving at the forefront of my relationships. These are my intentions: not to judge, but to seek understanding, not to fix, but listen and hear, not to expect to be another's happiness, but to help them discover their own joy. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "You must love in a way that the person you love feels free." This epitomizes non-attachment, as a person can feel free in a loving relationship or friendship and not feel possessed. Non-attachment is a way of freedom. In relationships, it is possible. We don't have to completely let go, but simply change or get rid of expectations in that bond. Moving forward, I can see that if I show up intentionally, then I can show up authentically. Thank you for showing up today to explore our purpose in relationships and non-attachment. I invite you to continue thinking about the possibilities, however impermanent. Perhaps these connections are a brief crossing of paths, a pause at an intersection, a chapter in our book of life. Perhaps they are forever and morph over time. I invite you to find gratitude for the relationships in your life, both past and present. Thank you all for holding this space. I honor your ability to let go of what's no longer meant for you. I'm grateful that we give each other a purpose together here in our congregation. I'm grateful that we can acknowledge what we each have to give and receive, no matter our experiences or desires.